$5 an hour. Took a year off of school, he's working in law.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the Mincha service. It's found in the Machzor at the very end, page 431. 431. Ashrei Yoshvei V'techa Od Yalucha Selah Ashreiham Shekachalo Ashreiham Shernai Eloha Tilal David Choyam Avarcheka Bezuzah Zecharat Tzidkat Hinei Chaylecha Yisaberu V'yatamot Elohem Tachla B'yita Tehillat Adonai daber pi v'vorech kol basar shem kodsho li'olam va'ed v'anachnu nevarach yamei atav yarolam Hallelujah Yitgada v'yitgada shemei rabba b'yamad divrach yirutei v'yamlech malchutei b'chayichon v'yomechon v'chayiducho beit Yisrael Magolav izman koriv imru amen yesh me'rav mevorach le'olam lo me'amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitterman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalol shemei d'kudusha b'rechu Leila Leila mikol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata damiram v'yalma v'imru amen. We recite the Amida together, 433. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech avoteinu le'Avraham le'Yitzhak ve'le'Yaakov El Agdol Gibor v'Nora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Yaakov Zocher Chazdei Avot Mevi Goel Ibnei Bneihem L'man Shmo B'Yava Zachreinu L'chaim Melech Hafetz B'Chaim Chotveinu B'Sefer HaChaim L'mancha Elohim Chaim Melech Ozer Moshe Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ta'ibo Le'elam Adonai Mechayim Meitim Atarav Le'Hoshia Mechakel Chaim B'Chesed Mechayim Meitim Barachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim Matir Asurim Umkayim Monato L'Shenei Afar Michamocha B'Gvurot Umido Melach Melach Memit Chayim Atzmiach Yeshua Michamocha Barachamim Zocher Yitzurav L'Chaim Barachamim Ne'eman Ata L'Chayot Meitim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim Nekadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam Kshem Shmat Shimoto B'Shmei Marom Ka'katuv V'Ayad V'Yachad Karazel Zev Yamar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot Melech L'Aretz Kavodo Limotam Baruch Yomim Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo Divrei Kodshcha Katuv Le'Mim Loch Adonai Le'Elam Elohai Tzion L'Dor V'Dor Hallelujah L'Dor V'Dor Nagid Godlecha ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך הקדוש ברוך אתה אדוני כונן הדעת ברוך אתה אדוני הרוצה בתשובה ברוך אתה אדוני חנון המרבה לסלוח Baruch atah Adonai Goel Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Rofei Cholei Amo Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Mevorech Hashanim Baruch atah Adonai Mekabetz Nidre Amo Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Hamelech HaMishpat Baruch atah Adonai shover oivim umachnia zeidim Baruch atah Adonai mishan u'mivtach latzadikim Baruch atah Adonai bonei Yerushalayim Baruch atah Adonai matzmiach keren Yeshua Baruch atah Adonai shomea tfilah Baruch atah Adonai machazir shchinato leTzion Modim anachnu lach. Hatov ki lo chalu rachamecha avaram rachem ki lo tamu chasadecha me'alam kivinu lach וכתוב לחיים טובים כל בני בריתך, ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך לך נאה להודות. בספר חיים ברכה ושלום, פרנסה טובה נזכר ונכתב לפניך. אנחנו לכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום. We continue silently now from the middle of 438 through 441. For the first time on Yom Kippur, we recite the Vidoi, the Ashamnu, and Alchem. חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון חשתנו. כולם אלוהי סליחות וצלח מחר. כולם אלוהי סליחות צלח מחר. כולם סליחות צלח מחר. זה לא Page 441. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבב, למד יברך יוטבי ימלך מלכותי, בחייכון ביומכון חייתך בית ישראל. והגולה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן, יהי שמי רב ומבורך לעולם לעולמי, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קדושה ברכו לעילה לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן, תתקבץ לא תעמדות הון תכל ישראל, קדם ועומדי בשמי ואמרו אמן, יהי שלום רב נשמע וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן, עשה שלום במרמה ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. 442 we rise. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, מושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו עוד. כי המלכות שלך היא ומעט תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. נאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Mourners Kaddish 443. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kori v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach li'olam lo me'omai. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalol Shemei b'kudusha b'rechu li'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiram b'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlomo rabba min shemayim V'chaim oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. If you've been with us before, you know that it's our very special temple Beth Torah tradition for Kol Nidre to call up the past presidents of our temple and to remove the Torah scrolls from the ark. Clearly, we can't do that tonight. But I do want to take just a few moments to honor all the men and women who have served this temple for its 60 years. You know, we're coming to the end of the celebration of our 60th anniversary, and we begin now our 61st year. And it's important for us to remember where we came from and where we need to go in the future. So we are especially indebted to these people who served as president of Temple Beth Torah. Joseph Einbinder, Leonard Horn, George Cohen, Arnold Grenier, Daniel Garb, Bernard Black, David Silverman, Harold Brensilber, Marvin Rosenberg, Henry Miller, Raymond Schleicher, Warren Weinstock, Paul Ring, David Norflus, Roberta Schleicher, Victor Lubash, Libby Rosenberg, Joseph Krakow, Irving Stone, Mark Drucker, Kenneth Kornhauser, Steve Tilzer, Ivan Ziegler, Diane Wall, Leonard Boston, Howard Kaufman, Harry Newman, Steve Dershowitz, Fred Hauser, Rich Rothstein, Renee Cornett, Mark Balazer, Andrew Marshall, Randy Lesnick, and now Marcy Frank. We are indebted, we thank those men and women for keeping us going and charting the way for us. And again, in our 61st year now, we remember where we've been and all we've been through, and we look forward to a different kind of future, but certainly a strong one and a bright one. And we pray that you will all continue to be very much a part of that. The formal Kol Nidre service begins in the Machzor on page 204, and it begins with a legal declaration. We say the last three lines in the Hebrew, B'yeshiva shel mala, and it says, by the authority of the court on high. When we use the word yeshiva, comes from the word yoshev, which means to sit. And here it means a sitting court. We are convening a court of the cantor, the rabbi, the congregants, who will enable us to make the legal declaration of Kol Nidre. But everybody knows the word yeshiva not as a court, but as a school. So when we say the yeshiva shel mala, the secondary meaning besides the court is we are convening a school for the next 24 hours here. And the question is, what is it that we can learn in the course of the next day? What can we learn about what God expects of us? More importantly, perhaps, what is it that we could learn about ourselves? Cantor Chesler leads us in the formula 204, right in the middle.
V'shiva shel mala, u'v'shiva shel malta, al dat hamakom, v'al dat hakahal, anu matirin להתפלל עם העבריינים. בשיבה של מעלה ובשיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. בשיבה של מעלה ובשיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים.
In Jewish law, legal formulas were often recited 3 times, as will be the Kol Nidre formula. Page 205.
Kol Nidre ve'asarei v'charamei ve'konamei ve'chinuyei Dindarna Udehishtabanna Udiacharimna Vidasarna Al-Nafshatana Miyom Kippurim Zeh Ad Yom Kippurim Sharan Shavikin Shavitin Betelin Umevuetalin La Sharirim Vela Kayanin Nidre la Nidre Viesarana la Hesare Wishvatana la Shevot.
All vows, renunciations, bans, oaths, formulas of obligation, pledges and promises that we vow or promise to ourselves and to God. From this Yom Kippur to the next, may it approach us for good. We hereby retract. May they be all undone, repealed, canceled, voided, annulled, and regarded as neither valid nor binding. Our vows shall not be considered vows. Our renunciations shall not be considered renunciations. And our promises shall not be considered promises. Kol Nidre.
Kol Nidre Viesare Vecharame Vekoname Vechinuye Vekinuye Se Veshevut Dindarna Udehishtabana Udiacharimna Vidasarna Al-Nafshatana Miyom Kippurim Zeh Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Letova Kulhon Yicharadna Vehon Kulhon Yehon Sherat Shevikin Shevikin yamin. Nidre nala nidre. Viesarana la esare. Wishvaretana la jevo.
Cantor continues, middle of the page.
V'nislach lechol adat b'nei Israel v'lager hagar betocham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga v'nislach lechol adat b'nei Israel v'lager hagar betocham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga v'nislach lechol adat b'nei Israel v'lager hagar betocham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga. Zlach na lavonam hazeh kegodel chastecha v'cha'asher nasata le'am hazeh miMitzrayim ve'arehena v'sham ne'emar Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Salachti kidvarecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lazman
Please be seated. Another of our Temple Beth Torah traditions is that we always call upon our current president to address us. It's my honor to call on Marcy Frank.
Shalom. My name is Marcy Frank, and I'm proud to be the new president of Temple Beth Torah. It's my pleasure to stand before you this evening, whether you're in the temple or on the live stream. I've been president of Temple Beth Torah now for several months, but for those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself. I grew up in Houston, Texas, at a very large and very active conservative synagogue. I attended Jewish preschool, Jewish day school. I attended junior congregation regularly, tutored bar mitzvah students when I was in high school, and I was active in BBYO. My family, including Josh, Dina, and Danielle, attended Friday night services each week at TBT before the COVID pandemic. And this is how we became acquainted with so many of our temple regulars. It's been so important to me as a working parent with kids in public school to introduce Judaism to our children when they are young so it becomes part of their everyday routine. It has not been easy for any of us coping with COVID, and especially not TBT. In the temple's 60th year, we, like others, are facing many challenges. We're holding many of our services remotely. We are mourning the loss of more than a few beloved members of the temple, and with Rabbi Katz's impending retirement, we've been actively searching for a new rabbi. Thank you to Cantor Chesler, who spearheaded 2 programs to reach out to all congregants, creating and distributing Shabbat bags while also hosting a regular Zoom and schmooze. And in addition, we're holding religious school remotely at a time when we would much rather meet in person, but we want to do this safely and carefully. We hope to announce our new rabbi soon. As we continue negotiations, we are looking at how we can redefine who we are and in what direction we as a temple will move. Can we bring in more younger families? Can we engage all members and build a true community of all generations? What are each of our members looking for in the future? At the same time, we, like many temples in the area, have financial challenges. We've always been fiscally conservative and responsible, yet this year, because of the COVID pandemic, we are operating for the first time at a deficit. On the high holidays, we normally welcome more than 750 people to our services and fill both the sanctuary and the social hall, not to mention the tent. Even though we can't see each other regularly right now, we need to come together with all members, not just Shabbat regulars, to partner in the hard work ahead. Our demographics may be continuing to change, but I believe there are many unaffiliated Jews across Nassau County and other Jews moving to our area from New York City. The prayers this past week focused on renewing God's kingdom for another year. During this time, we're expected to conceive a plan and engage in a vision for the future. This is what judgment is based on. As we contemplate our future, let's think out of the box and think about what we can do to contribute to the Long Island Jewish community while strengthening our own. One word about our future: we are not shutting down. Just as local businesses, schools, and families, we've had to redefine ourselves during this crisis. For 60 years, we've been a critical part of the lives of our members, and we fully intend to do so as we move into the next decade. I want to thank those of you who've sent in your financial support this year early in the process. We are not seeking support out of greed. Despite the assumptions of some that we haven't been doing anything, we've actually been quite busy. In fact, I think for the rabbi, the cantor, and the lay leadership, we haven't been busier. The support you provide pays to keep the building running, salaries paid for clergy and religious school teachers, and keep our temple operating. This cannot stop in a pandemic. Last year, we received 178 donations from our Kol Nidre appeal with about 60% participation. This year especially, we need your support. You can donate via mail or online. Now is the time to focus on our temple. I know many of you are suffering during this extensive quarantine period. If you're comfortable, we continue to need your financial assistance. Your support is what keeps TBT the synagogue we love. Many of us are canceling vacations this winter and remained home this past summer. Consider donating a small portion of those funds to TBT. Think about our welcoming nature and how we can evolve in the future. Think about the good that we, a community of individuals, can do together. I know that our demographics are changing, but think about all of the closed and consolidated synagogues in the area and how we have persevered. Having a strong community is more important than ever. I want to assure all of you that the success and well-being of TBT is close to our hearts. I look forward to working with everyone on the Board of Trustees and the greater congregation to bring the temple forward and position us best for the future. On behalf of temple leadership, thank you in advance for your generosity and for your support. As COVID ends one day, and perhaps there's a vaccine, there will be so much more we can do once again to come together in person for services, social activities, and community service work. This is not the time to abandon your religion or your spiritual home. We will always be here for you, and we hope you will always be here for us. May our sanctuary soon help us connect more deeply with God. May our religious school continue to enlighten us with lessons of Torah, and whether in person or on Zoom. May our community be open and inviting to all. My wish is for all of us to be safe and healthy in the coming year. Lashana Tova.
Thank you, Marcy. Yishar kochech. We begin with Mariv. We turn in the Machzor to page 207. We rise for Baruch. Amen 208.
Avat Olam. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla ve'avatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Vaed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha Bechol levavecha Uvechol nafshecha Uvechol me'oedecha Be'hayu Hadvarim ha'ele Asher Anorechi Mitzavecha Ayom al levavecha Ve'shinantam levanecha Ve'nibareta bam Ve'shiftecha bebeitecha Uvlechtecha v'derech Uveshoftecha Uvekumecha Ukshartam leot Al yadecha V'hayu letotapot B'neinecha Uchtavtaha Al mezuzot beitecha U'b'misharecha
209. Vayomer Adonai Moshe Lemor
Adonai Elohim, Amen.
I'm going to close this. What can I move? 210.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו לב משה ומרים ובני ישראל לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו לכולם מי כמוך בימים Adonai, mi kamoch neder bakodesh, nora tehilot osefele. Malchut charov vanecha, בוקע לפני משה, זה לי אנר ואמרו, אלוהינו ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, ולום יד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גל ישראל.
Name 211.
השכיבנו לשלום. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
212.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תטהרו. יתקדש שמי רבה בעולמה תפרח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. מי ישנה רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קדושה ברכו לעילה לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה Tushbechata V'nehemata Damirat Ve'olema V'meru Amen.
We'll recite the Amida out loud together. We begin 2:13.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'levoteinu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei האל הגדול, הגיבור ונורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו, באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ וחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים. למענך, למענך, אלוהים חיים, מלך עוזר. ופוקד משה ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים איתי מטרה להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיים מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים בחולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו בשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך ברחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, קדושים בכל יום יעלוך סלה.
2:15.
ובכן תן ברכתך אדוני אלוהינו על כל מעשיך, ממעמך על כל מה שבראת, יראוך כל המעשים וישתחוו לפניך כל הבנויים. יעשו כולם עבודך לעשות רצונך בלבב שלם, כמו שידענו אדוני אלוהינו, שהשלטון לפניך ושביעתך ובגבורה בימינך, ושמך נורא על כל מה שבראת. ובכן תן כבוד אדוני לעמך, תהילה לרעך, ותקווה לדורשך, ופתחון פה מייחלים לך, שמחה לארצך, לעירך, וצמיחת קרן דוד עבדך, ועריכת נר לבן ישי משיחך, במהרה בימינו ובכן צדיקים יראו וישמחו, וישרים יעלוזו, וחסידים ברינה יגילו. ועולת תקפוץ פיה, וכל הרישה כולה כעשן תכלה, כי תביא ממשלת זדון מן הארץ. ותמלוך את אדוני לבדיך, על כל מעשיך, בהר ציון משכן כבודך, ומירושלים עיר קודשך. ככתוב בדברי קודשך, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. קדוש אתה ונורא שמך, ואין אלוה מבלעדיך. ככתוב ויקבע אדוני צבאות במשפט, והאל הקדוש נקדש בצדקה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך הקדוש.
Amen. 2:16.
אתה בחרתנו מכל העמים, ואותנו רצית בנו ורוממתנו מכל השנות, וקידשתנו במצוותיך, וקירבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, בשם הגדול הקדוש שלנו קראת. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו בעבד יום הכיפורים הזה, למחילה ולסליחה ולכפרה, ולמחל בו את כל עוונותינו, מקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים. אלוהינו ולאבותינו ואמותינו, יעלה ויבוא ויגיע ויראה, וירצה וישמע ויפקד ויזכר זיכרוננו ופיקדוננו, וזיכרון אבותינו ואמותינו, וזיכרון משיח בן דוד עבדך, וזיכרון ירושלים עיר קודשך, וזיכרון כל עמך בית ישראל לפניך לפלטה לטובה, לכן ולחסד רחמים לחיים ושלום. ביום הכיפורים הזה זוכרנו אדוני אלוהינו בו לטובה, ופוקדנו בו לברכה, והושיענו בו לחיים. ובדבר ישועה ורחמים חסכננו, ורחם עלינו מושיענו כי אליך עינינו, כי אל מלך חנון רחום אתה. אלוהינו לאבותינו ואמותינו, נחלה עוונותינו ביום הכיפורים הזה, וחי ועבר פשענו וחטאותינו מנגד עיניך, כאמור אנוכי ומוחה פשעיך למעני, וחטאותיך לא אזכור. ונאמר 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 ונאמר, מחאתיך פשעיך, וכהנן חטאותיך, שוב אלי כי גאלתיך, ונאמר כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהרכם מכל חטאותיכם, מפני אדוני תטהרו.
2:17.
אלוהינו ולאבותינו ואמותינו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותחלקנו בתורתך, שמנו מטובך, וישמחנו בישועתך, ותטהר לבנו ותטהר, ותטהר לבנו ותטהר, ותטהר לבנו יעבדך באמת ותאר לנו ותאר לנו ותאר ליבנו יעבדך באמת כי אתה סולחן לישראל ומחלה לשבטי ישורון בכל דור ודור ומבלעדיך אין לנו מלך מוחל וסולח אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מוחל וסולח לעוונותינו ולעוונות עמו בית ישראל ומעביר אשמותינו בכל שנה ושנה מלך על כל הארץ מקדש ישראל מלך על כל הארץ מקדש ישראל מלך על כל הארץ מקדש ישראל ביום הכיפורים רצה אדוני אלוהינו ממך ישראל בתפילתם יושב עבודה לביר ביתך ותפילתם בבת תגבה ברצון ותהי ברצון תמיד ועדת ישראל עמך ותחזן עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון מודים אנחנו לו הטוב כי לך לא רחמך והמרחים תמו חסדך מעולם קיבלו לה ועל כולם יתברך קדרם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד וכתוב לך חיים טובים כל בני בריתך וכל החיים ידעו חסר ולא את שמך באמת תהיה ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע אתה אדוני הטוב שמך להודות שלום רב על ישראל עמך ועל כל יושבי תבל תשים עולם כי אתה מלך אדון לכל השלום וטוב בעיניך לברך עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך בספר חיים ברכה ושלום ובפרנסה טובה ניזכר וניכתב לפניך אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
Continue silently with the Ashamnu and Al-Chet, bottom of 218, continue through page 221. I'm in trouble. Today is the day of judgment, and I've committed a number of infractions. Well, we all have, but some of mine were done as the rabbi. Some of you may not have realized that what you did was wrong, but wrongs I committed as rabbi were all done knowingly. God probably expected more of me and is probably less likely to let me off the hook. Here's the situation. It was March, and the pandemic reared its ugly head. We decided we had to close the temple. No Hebrew school, no social events, no services. Yet this was precisely the time that people needed their temple the most. A place to come together to find solace and comfort from one another, a place to come to speak to God using the power and poetic words of our tradition. We set up a laptop computer on a lectern in the Bima and began live streaming our daily evening and Sunday morning services. The problem was Shabbat. As a conservative synagogue, we're committed to halakha, Jewish law. And it's pretty clear that turning on the computer and broadcasting our services on Friday night and Saturday morning is a violation. A bigger violation is encouraging people at home to violate Shabbat by accessing our feed. As the Mara Da'atra, the halachic authority, I made a number of decisions. First, that this was Sha'at HaDechak, literally a pressing hour, an emergency situation. I felt that having people connect to the temple and to tradition and to God in this moment of history took precedence over 3,000 years of Shabbat restrictions. I wasn't abolishing the rules, I was suspending them for the duration of the emergency. After our first broadcast, it became clear to me that people sitting at home without Sidurim to recite the prayers or Chumashim to follow the Torah reading were not likely to sit through a 2.25-hour service. I cut it down to 90 minutes. To do that, I had to leave out whole sections of traditional prayers. For example, on Saturday morning, before we get to the Shema, we recite 15 psalms, known as Psukei de Zimra. During normal times, in order to complete those 15 poems, we daven them as quickly as possible. Imagine how long it would take to read, comprehend, and truly appreciate 15 of Shakespeare's sonnets. How much longer would it take for poems in a foreign language? I've never been happy speed reading the opening psalms, but I was caught between a rock and a hard place, doing a complete service while making sure the service didn't drag on for 3+ hours. After 40 years, I was never happy with what I did. But now, with larger issues before me, I decided each week to focus on just one psalm. Better a little with meaning than everything without. Less is more. This section was reduced in time by 10 minutes. More importantly, those who followed that week's psalm walked away, I hope, with a better understanding of what the poet was feeling and what he or she wanted us to feel. The Shema is a core of our liturgy, and its 3 paragraphs were kept intact. But the Shema is surrounded by pages of meditations. All of that, except for the 3 actual blessings, were skipped. Without a congregation in the pews, there was no need to formally parade around the sanctuary with the Torah. We cut out Ein Kamocha and Vayehi bin Soah Ha'aron, as well as Yehalalu and Eitz Chaim. When there isn't a minyan present, you don't read from a Torah scroll. Instead, we read the portion from the Chumash. And of course, without congregants present, no one could be called up to the Torah for an aliyah. We thus didn't have the 8, or at a bar mitzvah, 10 repetitions of the Torah blessings. Another core of the service is the Amida. Usually people recite it first silently, then the cantor repeats it. This originated at a time when books were very rare. Most people didn't know the prayers by heart. So the cantor had to repeat all the words out loud for those who were unable to recite them on their own. The silent meditation gave everyone an opportunity to add their own personal prayers to God. But now, via live stream, we eliminated the repetition and simply recited the entire Amida out loud. It cut the time almost in half, although regrettably it did take away the programmed-in chance for people to add their own silent prayers. During evening services, the Amida is traditionally never repeated out loud. But again, when most people didn't have books, they would be lost. So we decided to break with tradition by reciting the evening Amida entirely out loud. Here's another change we made. Our Torah reading follows the triennial cycle. We read a third of the portion each week, but we've always read the full Haftorah. This had more to do with the fact that we didn't want to let bar and bat mitzvah kids off the hook by shortening the portions they had to learn. Now, if your Haftorah portion was Kedoshim, you lucked out. Only 9 verses. But if your date landed on Beshalach, you had to learn 55 sentences. But something just didn't make sense. The Torah reading from the first 5 books of the Torah is clearly more sacred than the Haftarah from the middle section of the Bible, the prophets. Yet we abbreviate the Torah and insist on a full Haftarah. Now, during the pandemic, I use the opportunity to abbreviate the prophets as well. In the absence of a minyan, we don't recite certain prayers. Baruch Hu, the Kedusha, the Chatzi Kaddish, the full Kaddish, and as I said, we don't read from the Torah scroll with multiple aliyot and blessings. We maintained that practice as we live streamed. Finally, one more change, perhaps my biggest infraction. Without a minyan present, you're also not supposed to recite the mourner's Kaddish. We do it anyway. Let me tell you why. More than 35 years ago, a family arrived at Friday night services to say Kaddish. They had yahrzeit. I was young, fresh out of school. I knew the rules. Sorry, we can't say Kaddish. The family rarely came to services, but when they did come, they needed to say Kaddish. I tried to explain the rules and their reason. The rabbis wanted us, as we dealt with loss, to be with a community of other people, and Jews define a community as 10. They didn't want people to stay home and remain alone and isolated. Now, if you show up on a Tuesday and there's only 8 people present, we could make phone calls, but not on Shabbat. The congregant let me know what she thought of the rules of the temple and of the rabbi. I'm not sure if we ever saw them again. Now, the tradition provides alternatives to reciting Kaddish in the absence of a minyan. You could say the El Mole prayer, which doesn't require a minyan. You could perform a mitzvah like giving to tzedakah, which is considered even greater than saying the Kaddish. Our Sidur, Lev Shalem, has created a substitute prayer that sounds somewhat like Kaddish. But as rabbi, I have decided that we will always recite the Kaddish, even if we don't have a minyan. Reciting the mourner's prayer is of such emotional importance to people that they won't be swayed by the rules or the reasons behind them. I think I understand my people and where they are coming from. I've tried for 40 years to teach them the right thing to do, but most don't listen. So I've given in. Does that make me a courageous iconoclast and a dynamic innovator, or merely a weak and irresponsible custodian of a 3,000-year-old tradition? That is something that I struggle with all the time. Orthodox Jews didn't have any halachic dilemmas during the pandemic. You don't live stream on Shabbat, period. If the governor forbids gatherings of 10 people for any reason, you can't come to shul and you can't say Kaddish. You pray by yourself at home. Reform Jews didn't have any halachic dilemmas during the pandemic. Ritual regulations are not as important or as binding as ethical injunctions. And they believe the prohibition against the use of electricity on Shabbat makes no sense in the 21st century. Conservative Judaism is the approach that is caught in the middle. How do you maintain tradition and still live in the modern world? And under what circumstances can you make changes? Driving on Shabbat to get to services when you live in the suburbs? Ordaining women as rabbis and cantors? Allowing a Jewish wedding ceremony for two people who are gay? Using a computer on Shabbat to live stream a service? Constituting a minyan over the internet when the 10 people are in 10 different places? Hopefully, the pandemic will soon become just a bad memory, and life will get back to normal. We wonder how our lives will be different. No more snow days off from school when you can have Zoom classes. More people working from home instead of commuting to work. More doctor's appointments via teleconferencing instead of in the office. And how will the coronavirus pandemic of 2020 change synagogue life? Maybe all services should be shorter, even when people can come to the temple. Maybe we should always live stream our prayers for those who are ill, or for family and friends of the bar mitzvah or baby naming who live out of town. I said before that I was suspending the rules, not abolishing them. When the all clear is finally sounded, will the congregants allow the rabbi to restore things as they used to be? Or once an exception is made, you're stuck. The barn door has been opened and the horse has escaped. I'll tell you my biggest fear. Will people decide that they somehow managed without the temple during the virus? So why do they need it now? Why bother with membership, with dues, with Hebrew school, with carpools? We don't need the building and we don't need the clergy. We live in a DIY, do-it-yourself world, and everything you need can be found at your fingertips on your computer. Which is why I need to thank all of you who have stuck by us during these difficult months and who continue to support us. We learned that you wear a mask to protect other people. Similarly, you join a temple even if you may not need it. Others in the Jewish community do. Well, I've confessed my sins, if that's what you want to call them, or my rule breaking, if that's what you think it is. It being Judgment Day, I expect to have to explain myself to God. I'm not sure that I can tell him, I'm sorry. We were faced with an emergency and I did what I thought best under the circumstances. I'd probably do it all over again. I could be in trouble. I hope you'll put in a good word for me. We continue our services in the Machzor. We turn to page 227. Here we have a piyut, a liturgical poem, sometimes called La Brit Habeit, or Kihine Kachomer. You'll notice that it speaks about God as a craftsman, a potter, a mason, a blacksmith, a glazer, a draper. It's almost as if we need work done on us. We need to be repaired. we need to be fixed. And so we're sent back today to the repair shop. God is the repairman. You know, the potter shapes the clay, that's us. The mason chisels the stone. The blacksmith hammers the iron. The draper cuts the cloth. What it really says and what it really reminds us is that each of us has imperfections, and we come to God today and ask him to help us to fix them. We Cantor will begin in the Hebrew, and then we'll look in the English, every other paragraph, 227.
הנה כחומר ביד היוצר, ברצותו מרחיב וברצותו מקצר. כן אנחנו בידך חסד רוצה, לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר.
As stone in the hand of the mason who preserves or breaks it at will, so are we in your hand, God of life and death. Recall your covenant. Do not heed the accuser.
כי הנה כגרזן בידך רש, ברצותו דיבק לאור וברצותו פרש. כן אנחנו בידך תומך אני ורש, לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר.
As the helm in the hand of the sailor who holds the course or abandons it at will, so are we in your hand, good and forgiving God. Recall your covenant. Do not heed the accuser.
כי הנה כזכוכית ביד המזגג, ברצותו חוגג וברצותו ממוגג. כן אנחנו בידך מוחל זדון ושגג, לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר.
As cloth in the hand of the draper, who drapes or twists it at will, so are we in your hand, righteous God. Recall your covenant. Do not heed the accuser.
כי הנה ככסף ביד הצורף, ברצותו משגשג וברצותו מצרף. כן אנחנו בידך ממציא למזור טרף, לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר.
Page 229, we will recite many times on Yom Kippur the Shalosh Esrei Midot, the 13 attributes of God. They're found in bold right in the middle of the page. We speak about God as merciful, gracious, patient, kind, forgiving. You know, a lot of our notion of God on Yom Kippur is of a stern judge. But here we're sort of reminding God of his soft side, of his positive qualities. During the course of these 24 hours, we will say over and over again how terrible we are and how miserable we are with the Ashamnu and the Al-Chet and thinking about all of our sins. Just as we remind God about his softer and better nature, so too it's important that we also remind ourselves of our better nature, of our good qualities today. We will see now what God's 13 attributes are. What are ours? Cantor continues to 29.
El melech yoshev al kisei rachamim, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו, מעביר ראשון ראשון, מראה במחילה לחטאים, וסליחה לפושעים, עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח, לא חרתם תגמול, אל הורית לנו לומר 13, זכור לנו היום ברית 13, כמו שידעת לענוב מקדם, כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בענן, ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני, ויעבור אדוני על פניו, ויקרא אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים, ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד להלכים, נושא עוון ופשע, וחטא ונקה, וסלחת לעווננו ולחטאתנו ונחתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, נחלנו מלכנו כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
233, Shema Kolenu, 4 lines. It's almost as if in the first line we say to God, Kabel et tfilatenu, accept our prayer. Perhaps imagine a palace. We go to the king and we brought a petition. We're lucky if they let us in. We're lucky if we can give the petition over to somebody who will give it to the king. And then we say, Hashivenu, please give us a call back. Hopefully the king will read the petition and he'll say, bring me back this person. I want to hear directly from them. Then in the third line we say, Al tashlichenu. And then after the king hears from us personally, we hope that he's not going to kick us out. He's not going to throw us away without having answered. And then in the fourth line, we say, Kechlot kochenu al ta'azvenu. I got a long way back home. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I don't have any food with me. Please don't abandon me. Please don't turn your back on me when we need you the most. Shema Kolenu 233. וקבל ברחמים ולרצון
Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashu eva Chadesh yameinu Chadesh yameinu Chadesh yameinu Chadesh yameinu kekedra ay tashlichenu milfanecha al tashlichenu milfanecha veruach kodshecha veruach kodshecha al tikach ay al tashlichenu leit zikno kichlot kochenu al tazveinu Adonai Eloheinu al tirchaknu Tov Yerushalayim ki ata Adonai Adonai etzmenu Eloheinu kicha Adonai olchanu Atatane Adonai Eloheinu v'levoteinu yevoteinu Al tazveinu v'al titshenu Al tachlimenu Feritcha yitnu Karabinu l'toratecha lamdenu mitzvotecha Horeinu drachecha Hod libeinu lira et shemecha umol Elevavinu yavatecha V'nashu v'lecha b'yamet b'lehivat shalim Shimcha gadol timchal V'tislach lavonenu kakatu b'divrei kodshecha Leman shimcha Adonai V'salachta lavoni giratu.
On page 234, Anu Amecha, I want you to consider the following. God is running for the office of God. And he's got an image. He's the king, he's God, he's the judge, And he goes to an ad agency and he says, I need a different image. I want you to come up with a bunch of commercials that are going to portray me in a very different way. So I'm much more an attractive candidate for the office of God. So they go back, and then they ultimately come back and they say, here's what we got. We created this song, Anu Amecha, and in it, we're going to picture you as a parent, and then we're going to picture you as a shepherd, and then we're going to picture you as somebody who is a protector, and then somebody who is a lover, the beloved of a spouse. He said, these images of you are really going to win people over, are going to soften your image and create a very different notion. And that indeed is what Anu Amecha is really all about. 234.
Eloheinu v'le'avoteinu v'imoteinu, selach lanu, mecha lanu, kaper lanu, ki anu amecha v'yata Eloheinu, anu v'necha v'yata avinu, anu avadecha v'yata adonenu, anu kelecha v'yata chelkeinu, anu nachlatecha v'yata goraleinu, anu tzonecha v'yata roeinu, anu charmecha v'yata noetreinu, anu filatecha v'yata yotzreinu, anu rayatecha v'yata doedeinu, anu segulatecha v'yata kroeveinu, anu amecha v'yata malkeinu, anu mamirecha v'yata mamireinu.
235, we rise. We continue with Ashamnu.
Ay, 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 Ashamnu, Vaganu, Gazanu, Dibarnu Edoefi, ay, 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 Hevinu, Behirshanu, Zanu, Hamasnu, Tafanu, Sheker, ay, 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 Yatznu, Hizavnu, Latznu, Maranu, Niatznu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Orath, ay, 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 Rashanu, Shechanu, Tiavnu, Tahinu, Titanu.
We continue on 237 with Al-Chet.
Al-Chet, שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, ועל-Chet שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב.
For the sins done unwittingly, for the mitzvahs done willingly, for the sin of hardening our heart, for the mitzvah of opening our heart, for the sins done thoughtlessly, for the mitzvahs done with great consideration, for the sins done by idle chatter, for the mitzvah of making our words count.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים, ועל כולה אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולה אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו.
For the sins of sexual immorality, for the mitzvah of faithfulness, for the sins done openly and in private, for the mitzvahs done for all to see and when no one could see, for the sins done knowingly and deceitfully, for the mitzvahs done by being open and forthcoming, for the sins in the way we talk, for the mitzvah of speaking kindly and sensitively.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעיניים רמות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח, ועל כולה אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולה אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו.
For the sin of defrauding others, for the mitzvah of helping others, for the sins of our innermost thoughts, for the mitzvah of keeping some things to ourselves, for the sins of forbidden trysts, for the mitzvah of avoiding pornography. May our mitzvot outweigh our chata'im, may our good deeds cancel out our sins.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתשומת יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתימהון לבב, ועל כולה אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולה אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו.
We turn to 243, Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Elam Melech Haaretz, Avinu Malkeinu.
Middle of the page, bold lines. We repeat after the cantor.
Avinu Malkeinu, החזירנו בתשובה שלמה לפניך. אבינו מלכנו, שלח רפואה שלמה לחולי עמך. אבינו מלכנו, זוכרנו בזיכרון טוב לפניך. אבינו מלכנו, כותבנו בספר חיים טובים. אבינו מלכנו, malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer geulah v'yeshua.
Vino malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer geulah v'yeshua.
Amen malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer parnasah b'chalkala.
Vino malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer parnasah.
Amen malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer zechuyot.
Vino malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer
Amen
zechuyot.
malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer slicha u'mechila.
Vino malkeinu kodveinu b'sefer slicha u'mechila. Page 244.
Avinu malkeinu, choneinu evaneinu. Avinu malkeinu, choneinu evaneinu, ki ein banu imasim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu malkeinu, choneinu vaneinu. Avinu malkeinu, choneinu evaneinu, ki ein banu imasim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu.
Middle of 245.
Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, v'yolema divrach yirteh, v'yamlich malchueteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, אמרו, אמן, יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם, ויתנשא ויתהדר, ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקודשה, שמי לקודשה, ברכו לאלה לאלה, מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, אמרו, אמן. תתקבל צלותיהון ולאותיהון דכל ישראל, קדם אבוהון, דיבי שמיה, דיבי שמיה, אמרו, אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, יעשה שלום עלינו, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמרו,
Olenu 246.
עלינו לשבח, לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה, ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהת, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שנוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקר השמיים ימעל. שכינתו זו ושכינתו זו בגבי מרוממים, הוא אלוהינו אינו. ככתוב בתורת אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר קרא אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד.
May be seated, 248, לדוד.
לדוד אדוני אורי בשמי מאירה, אדוני מעוז חיי ממי אבחר. לולא האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, קבל אדוני חזק ויאמץ ליבך, וקבל אדוני.
Mourners Kaddish 247. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divra chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. V'hagala v'zman kori v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach li'olam la'amei omai. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei d'kudusha b'rechu li'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlomo rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav u'ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. A big todah rabbah, thank you to Rich Rothstein, the wizard behind the curtain, and to our ushers and the buildings committee, Ed Katzen, Howie Liebenstein, Mark Lippman, Ken and Betty Weiss, Len Austin, David Gerard, Bob Shapiro. We deeply appreciate all of your help. Tomorrow morning we convene at 9 o'clock and we conclude with Yigdal 250.
Yigdal Elohim Chai V'yishtabach Nimtza v'yeneh El Mitzirto Echad ben Yachid Yechido Nelam v'gam in sof Le'achduto Ein lo demut aguf V'yein guf Lo na'aroch elav Kedu shato Kadmon lechol davar Asher nivra Rishon v'rishit L'reshito Himno Adonolam V'chono Itzar Yoreh Gedulato U'machwito Shefa Nebuato Etano Anshe Segulato V'veti Sparto, lo kam beYisrael kemoshe od navi uemabit at tenunato Torah emet natan le'amoel al yad nevio ne'eman beito lo yachalifael velo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato tzofeh ve'odea sitarenu mabit lesof davar bekadmato gomel leish chesed kemifalo notein lerashara kerishato yishlach leketz yamin meshechenu liftot mechakeketz Yeshuato metim yechael beroev chasto baruch adead shem tehilato metim yechael beroev chasto baruch adead shem tehilato.
Gemar Chatima Tova.
Gemar Tov.